country says it's removing an obstacle to democracy. It has, at least in a formal sense, disbanded the state security agency that spied on and oppressed people. The move comes just before Egyptians vote on a constitution and start political campaigns. And we're going to talk through all these with NPR's Soraya Sarhadi. What does it mean to disband an agency whose spies are everywhere?
Well, this is the big question that many people have. Certainly this is what protesters wanted. They wanted this agency to go away completely. But many fear this may also just be a word game, if you will, because there's discussion of building a new force that will have similar functions, although it will be less focused on spying on the people.
So it's going to be a new agency, different name, possibly some of the same people?
That is what the great fear is. The feeling is also that this was a carrot that's being offered to Egyptians in order to entice them to the polls this weekend.
Well, let's talk about that. On Saturday now, coming right up just in a few days, Egyptians are supposed to vote on constitutional amendments. About half a dozen have been put together by a panel that was backed by the army. And this is the beginning of a pretty fast-moving process here. Right after that, political campaigns begin. There's a vote for parliament. There's a vote for president, assuming the constitutional changes are approved. This is a lot happening fairly quickly. What are people saying about this?
Well, they're very excited about elections, but they have a lot of trepidation about elections, especially the fact that they're moving so quickly. They're excited about some of the names that have emerged. People like Nobel Peace Prize laureate Mohammed al-Baradei and Arab League General Secretary Ahmad Moussa, as some of the people who've put platforms out there. But at this one cafe that I went to, Horea Cafe, which is very famous for people getting together and having political debates, there was one patron that I spoke to, Fatih Saad, who was one of the many who were expressing how the excitement that they feel over the prospect of elections really is tempered by the fact that it's going to be structured in such a way that perhaps will not allow some of the new voices that are emerging for democracy to be part of it. Assad argues that rushing into elections now is just going to lead to another ruler who's going to control Egypt but not answer to the people. He and many other Egyptians believe time should be given for the revolution's young leaders to form political parties and platforms. But Egypt's military rulers are in no mood to wait. They are charging ahead with a referendum this Saturday on hastily drawn-up constitutional amendments. Khalid Fahmy chairs the history department at the American University in Cairo.
Now, as much as we want the army to get out of the picture, we also don't want it to rush things so rapidly that what we end up with is a very faulty system.
He says even top presidential contenders as al-Baradei and Moussa oppose the constitutional amendments drafted last month by the military's hand-picked experts. The measures would become part of a temporary constitution that the army can use to turn authority over to a civilian government. But opponents say the amendments have longer-lasting implications because they determine who can run for president and parliament in elections scheduled for later this year. Critics argue the rush only benefits Hosni Mubarak's former colleagues and possibly a few organized political movements because they're already well established. They, in turn, will get to pick the committee that will draft a permanent constitution. So, in effect, Egypt's military rulers are disenfranchising youth leaders and others responsible for the revolution, Fahmy tells us.
The way they did the amendments fell far short of what this revolution really stands for, which is basically consultation and true democracy.
The army-appointed official overseeing the referendum disagrees. Mohammed Attea says more than half of Egypt's 80 million citizens will be eligible to vote for or against the amendments. He predicts it will be the first referendum to reflect the real will of the Egyptian people.
Okay, that's NPR's Soraya Sarhadi Nelson here in Cairo. Soraya, thanks very much.
You're welcome, Steve.
And let's hear a little more of Egypt's political discussion right now. A couple of weeks ago, the Egyptian novelist Alaa al-Aswani appeared on a TV panel and talked politics. He joined the prime minister, in fact, the last one appointed by President Hosni Mubarak, and it was not a gentle discussion. Aswani attacked the prime minister for his connections to the old regime, and the next morning that prime minister resigned. Aswani, a fierce opponent of Mubarak, wrote the novel The Jacobean Building and a book of essays called The State of Egypt. He's also a dentist and spoke with us near his dentist's chair. When Egyptians vote on those constitutional amendments this weekend, Aswani is voting no. He says too much of the old rules would remain in place.
You see, the president, according to this revolution, is the president of life. He is the president of everything. He is the president of the army, of the navy, of the police, of the judges, of everything. Probably except dentist. He's not the one.
And maybe there's a minister of dentistry somewhere that even that would be under his control.
You cannot make reforms on this terrible constitution. We make this resolution to make a new constitution, to make elections, to make a new constitution.
So much of this revolution has been so remarkably public. It's happened on the streets. It happened in Tahrir Square, not very far from this dentist's office where we're sitting. It's been in plain view. Now it seems to be moving into a different phase. What do you think might be happening behind the scenes that is not obvious to us?
The enemies of the revolution, I think we would be mistaken if we think of them as only the big figures. I mean, you have the little people who are corrupt. They are going to fight back.
We're talking about people that might be university professors who might have government jobs, maybe not the worst people in the world, but they have accommodated themselves to the old system.
If you're talking, for example, about the presidents of the universities, about the deans of the faculties, all these people got their posts through the security state. So it means simply that they have been cooperating and reporting their colleagues for years
to the intelligence service.
So they don't expect them at all to be happy with the revolution. And then you go to the security state officer who was ruling the country, who was very rich, everything was for him, and now he is hiding, see? And at some point he is going to be brought to justice. So this guy is going to fight back, to destroy the revolution. And you could get more and more till you reach the very little police soldier who used to have bribes. I think the counter-revolution has many layers. You still have remnants from the old regime in power.
Are there so many people who found a place in this regime, who supported the regime,
Yes.
you can't get rid of them all. You just can't do it.
No, I'm not going to kick them out all. I don't like these people to be decision makers because they are going to decide against the revolution. But the ordinary corrupt person, this is another story. But you cannot leave, for example, the highly ranked responsible in the Egyptian TV are security state spies, and nobody touches them because they are going to manipulate and they are going to tell lies in the news, and this is what is happening now.
Let's remind people there's still state TV, it's still broadcasting, it's still many of the same
broadcasting, and they still get instructions from the security state people. So these people should be changed.
How will you know when democracy has been fully won?
New constitution.
Brand new constitution, not an amended constitution.
Of course, nobody did that in the world. You're not going to fix to make a surgical operation for a dead man. You see, it doesn't make any sense.
You don't do that in the dentist
I
chair.
don't do that in dentistry either. You see, so they are doing that. They are trying to operate a dead man.
Ala al-Aswani is the author of the Jacobian Building and a new book on the state of Egypt. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you.
It's Morning Edition from NPR News.
And this is KUT 90.5. Glad you're with us this morning. It's 7:49. I'm Lori Gallardo with KUT's Austin Music Minute. And I've got more South by Southwest showcase recommendations, both official and off the radar. Starting with 2-day shows. First, the Terrorbird Media and Force Field PR South by Southwest Day Party. That's today at noon at Red 7 on East 7th Street, featuring bands Braids and Toro y Moi. Also, Austin Renegade band The Midget Men are hosting Texas Jumpstart Chord. That's today at noon at Hole in the Wall in Guadalupe. And tonight, there's the Brooklyn Vegan Showcase at 8 p.m. at the Swan Dive on Red River, close to East 7th, featuring performances by Ted Leo and Sharon Van Etten. Check the music section of KUT.org for details and schedules. Here's music by a band playing the Terrorbird Media Showcase, Generationals. Support for KUT comes from CGI, a partner to government in industry, delivering IT solutions for mission-critical programs for 35 years. Details at cgi.com/Texas. No surprises. Results Texas can count on. Expect clouds and some drizzle in the Austin area this morning. Partly sunny skies, though, by this afternoon. Highs near 78 degrees. Partly cloudy this evening. Mostly cloudy overnight. Lows near 62. Right now it's 62 in Austin at Camp Mabry. Support for KUT comes from New Armor Active Packs lunch kits. Packaged meals containing whole wheat wraps, real meat, and crisp apple slices. Available in the refrigerated lunch kit section at H-E-B. Active Packs. Lunch done better. School districts across the country are facing difficult decisions if proposed budget cuts become reality. In Florida's Duval County, high school administrators are talking about eliminating all sports. Not unexpectedly, commentator Frank DeFord says that would be unfortunate.
School sports surely mean more in the United States than in any other country. For small-town America, sports teams even have become a significant part of a community's identity. And now that so many American school districts, even whole states, are facing reductions in school funding, more and more it is athletics that are being cut back. Sometimes now public school sports survive only by the grace of private donations from parents and fans. Of course, it's not just sports that are prime prospects for elimination, but also art and music. After all, sports, art, and music, the SAM of school, what I call the SAM activities, are known as extracurriculars. Emphasis on the extra. They're the logical expenses to slash before you take down the educational basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's impossible not to argue with this rationale, but it's also true that when children who are artistic or musical are denied that opportunity in school, their young personal loss eventually not only robs them of developing their talent, but diminishes us as a culture. And to knock out athletic exercise at a time when childhood obesity is an absolute epidemic could be just as damaging for the health of the nation. David Brooks, in a recent New York Times column, also notes that administrators who cut the SAM activities are deluding themselves, because in the long run, these are the interests that, quote, keep kids in school and build character. Ironically, the most sensible extracurricular activity to be eliminated would be the most controversial. Football. Yes. It's excessively expensive compared to other sports. It's played only by one-sex boys, and the evidence grows regularly now that it is a dangerous sport, rife with concussions, which can damage young brains. Now, the hue and cry that would go up if schools started trying to drop our favorite sport would be at the mega level, and would probably produce more hysteria than raising taxes would. But from a strictly realistic, cost-effective, health-effective, culture-effective point of view, it would make the most sense to drop football. That would allow art and music to remain in school and divert boys into safer athletic exercise. Or, look at it this way. If administrators actually threaten to eliminate football, the football people might finally have to try and take the deadly violence out of the game.
The comments of Frank DeFort, who joins us each Wednesday. This week, Austin, Texas hosts the 25th South by Southwest Music Conference. Over the years, the 5-day festival has been a way for bands to break out of internet stardom and into the mainstream. It's also helped established bands to capitalize on the music industry's captive audience in Austin and revitalize their careers. One of those bands is Duran Duran, which has a new album called All You Need Is Now. Duran Duran will be headlining the festival tonight. Here to preview the festival is NPR music critic Ann Powers. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So, South by Southwest used to be about roots music, vintage rock and roll. Of course, vintage is a moving target. What's vintage these days?
I know, it's funny, isn't it? To the kids, the 80s is ancient history, and I think we've seen that in recent years at South by Southwest. In the mid-90s, you'd see artists like Johnny Cash or the late great soul legend Arthur Alexander having great comeback moments. But now, it can be somebody like Duran Duran.
Are the fans in Austin really interested in these old guys, these once popular groups, or Or is it really, I always think of it as being all about the new and the unknown and the first look.
Well, discovery is still a huge part of South by Southwest, and this year you have artists like the hip-hop collective Odd Future and the New York duo Cults that there's a lot of excitement about. This is a big chance to make a national splash.
Well, tell us about some of the acts that you were looking forward to.
Well, there's a great new Brooklyn-based rapper slash funkster named Theophilus London, who's apparently has kind of a Prince-like show, although that's always, you know, quite an ambition to fulfill. This track, which I think is pretty funky, is called Why Even Try?
I like that. That sounds good.
It's got that little Prince-like feel, doesn't it? I mean, it's funny because it even has an almost Duran Duran-like feel. And Theophilus London is someone, he's influenced by R&B and also by rock. So a lot of young artists are like that today. They're taken from all over the place. And that's one of the cool things about having older acts at South by Southwest is that you can see the connection between the older artists and the newer ones.
Now, as I understand it, you also picked something that is completely different for us.
Okay, now I'm at work.